Leading up to the release of this movie, there was a lot of conversation. Marvel's Phase 4 has been kind of not like super well received by fans.
It's been tepid.
Been a little all over the place. Can Black Panther right the ship, steer things back into the right direction? This movie had a really big task at hand because it not only had to deal with the loss of a character, the loss of an actor who portrayed the character, and now also probably not even aware, well, I'm sure they were aware of it, but dealing with the weight that the fans were putting onto it.
It was a lose-lose, I think. I don't know.
No woman, no cry. Little darling, don't shed no tear. No woman, no cry.
I think they knocked it out of the park. I'll say it right off the bat. I thought this movie was fantastic. The movie opens up extremely emotionally. It like tosses you right into it. Shuri is, praying to the god Bast that she doesn't even believe in, saying, please save my brother and I will devote my life to you, whatever. And it's interesting because a lot of people have these moments in real life where in times of hardship, they will turn to religion or
desperate moments, desperate measures.
Yeah. So the movie tosses you right into the situation at hand. Then we were all prepared for that, right? But it does a really good job. I was crying right from the beginning. And also, then they fucking hit you with the opening, which the title sequence, which is all dedicated to Chadwick. But they do it in like it's quiet. There's no music. There's nothing. It's just like, hey, here's the guy. This movie feels like a big wake. Feels like a $200 million wake. And again, it's a wake for not only Chadwick, but a wake for the character of T'Challa. What I really, really liked about the movie is that they used the death of both to drive character and not plot. They could have easily gone in a direction. I mean, they kind of did a little bit, but it wasn't the dominant part of the plot. It was just a sort of little bit of a side thing, like, Wakanda lost their king and now they're in a weakened state, so we want our vibranium from the global perspective. But that wasn't the main plot of the movie, really. I mean, it was integral, but my point being is that they didn't say like, oh, T'Challa's dead and that's the reason why Namor's invading or whatever. It was meant to build up other characters.
Right. Yes, they did well to divert that to the underwater.
The large bulk of the story was this opposing view that's primarily between Shuri and Ramonda, which is like the old ways versus like progressivism or technological advancement or whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
Spiritualism versus skepticism and how both sides of that coin sort of deal with mourning and make sense of death. The movie's told through the perspective of Shuri, and I thought that was really great. I loved her story arc. I was really pleasantly surprised as to how they pulled that off because going into the movie, I had spoken to my boy Ed. Shout out to Ed. He had a bit of a lukewarm response to the movie. It was like, I liked it, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going into it thinking it was just going to be like more Phase 4, like kind of shit. But I personally, I very much think it was not that. I think this is the best movie in Phase 4 other than Spider-Man. I have some issues with it.
It may be the best movie in Phase 4, but that's not saying a lot. I thought the Namor stuff was good. It feels cheap to say that they lost an opportunity at a plot device. And I hope maybe they haven't. When the movie starts, you know that T'Challa is sick. You don't know why. He's been sick for a long time. So that it's basically a mirror of what happened to Boseman.
Which I really liked.
That he was sick and he didn't tell anybody for a long time and he lived with it. And then it was basically too late. For a character like T'Challa to die in the MCU and we don't really know why, maybe they're graying that out so that they could say, because let's just break it down to the end, T'Challa is alive because he has a son.
You don't think the death was enough for the character?
No, it wasn't.
Well, we had talked about this going into it. Like, how are they going to
feel more impactful if like, if little T'Challa finds out that his dad wasn't just sick and he didn't tell anybody and nobody could save him because the flowers were burned up, but he was actually poisoned by somebody like Dr. Doom, that would give little T'Challa a good story arc of justice versus revenge
Yeah.
type deal.
Well,
But they just kind of brush it under the rug, and it feels
yeah.
a little cheap.
I don't think they brushed it under the rug, but I think they didn't make a big deal of it. They didn't make a plot point out of it of like, hey, it was Doctor Doom or it was this thing or that thing or whatever. I don't think they really had to do that, and I think the movie does a really good job.
But they did.
What do you mean they did?
People want to know why he died.
We know why. He had a disease.
Yeah.
He had a
It's
sickness.
very vague. We don't really know.
It's not really. I mean, who cares though? It doesn't matter. That's where I think the movie did a good job. It doesn't matter how he died or why. You still feel like it doesn't matter because this movie's not about that. It's about loss and mourning and how you deal with that loss, and not so much mourning because that's like the initial reaction to death as human beings deal with it. When really it should be about celebration.
Well, and this was a lot also about Shuri coming to terms with
Yes, correct.
her agnostic scientific beliefs are not all that is in the world, because she, even when praying, didn't believe until she actually got into
Well, Shuri is us in this movie. She's the audience.
afterlife.
She's the audience, and she's really, as I said earlier, we experienced the movie through her eyes, so much so that we don't even really engage with T'Challa, the character, except for like, they have the funeral in the beginning and they say his name and, they celebrate him. Thank you for the gift of T'Challa, his murals on the wall. But we don't actually engage with the character really until she engages with the character. The end of the movie, she comes to terms with everything and burns the ceremonial cloth like her mother suggested, representing being able to move on from the grief. I don't think his death mattered. And this was a conversation that we talked about going into it, leading up to this movie. You and I talked about it like, I wonder how they're going to deal with his death. Are they going to do something where it's like, oh, he died off screen to like Doctor Doom or whatever? I actually think this was like the best way they could have handled it, because it really, at the end of the day, doesn't matter how he died. He's dead. And I think they took the higher road in terms of...
It matters to the fans who want to know, though.
Personally, I don't agree with looking at it that way. His death is felt, right? Throughout the whole movie. His absence, his loss, it's all felt. It's the driving force of the movie. Regardless of why he died, that doesn't change. The only way that would change is if there's a new supervillain in town who fucking killed T'Challa off screen. And that would have been, in my opinion, a cheap way of handling it. I think they did the respectful thing of saying this super impactful and important character died because of him being the character that we know of him to be. He didn't tell anybody of his disease because he came back to a Wakanda after being blipped for 5 years and then fucking saving the universe in Endgame, and just went back to work repairing Wakanda from the devastation and all the loss and helping his people. That's why T'Challa is such an impactful character, because of that.
It's just
before we started recording.
Okay, so all right. So as a fan, all right, let me break it down for you a little bit. All right. So he has the power of the Black Panther, which does have the power to heal. The whole reason that you have to remove yourself of that power when you're being challenged for the throne is it's not fair,
right?
Because it has all you have the power, the Panther power, heal, all these things.
Yes.
So if he has that power, but he also has a disease that's killing him, like it. Do you understand how that creates questions of like that doesn't make any sense?
Yeah.
From a fan perspective, like that's frustrating,
right? But I'm telling you, as a fan, as a fan, you need to have. It's almost like the horror movie conversation that we had. Like there are some things you just have to kind of step back and be like, okay. Like you have to. Otherwise,
they could have done a better job, I think. I don't know.
Otherwise, you're going to sit there like, questioning things like this and sort of taking you out of the movie. I've seen other people having the same issue with it. I personally just didn't care. I was like, oh, well, it's, he's dead.
Right. This is a matter of preference. Some people want to know what happened and why, because they're invested in this character, because they love the first movie or they read comics and they love the character. For the non-answer that they gave, that's frustrating to a lot of fans. So I can see how a lot of people... But they did
give an answer. He had a disease. What it was doesn't matter. You know what I mean? And it could have been COVID. Who the fuck knows?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, who knows?
If something's killed Superman that wasn't kryptonite and they didn't explain it to you, you would just be like, Yeah, it's okay.
I think
Whatever. I don't care.
I think that's a very different
I don't-
scenario.
No, it's not.
It is.
Okay. All right. Beg to differ. Agree to disagree. It's fine.
I mean, it's fine, but you have to, again, step away from comic book brain for a second and put yourself in.
Can't.
You have to. That's the whole point. It's like our conversation about horror movies. It's like when you're watching a horror movie, you have to separate yourself from like what a person would actually do in those situations versus what you're seeing on the screen. Otherwise, you're just not going to have a good time. If that's how you choose to like look at a movie or something like that, that's your prerogative. I try my best not to do those things because then these issues start to come up. Is it a plot hole? Maybe. Did it really matter to the overall quality of the movie? For me, no, it didn't.
Aneka, where is your spear?
Shuri gave me this to try. You know, I like them better.
This movie was very self-contained, and that's the reason why I liked it, because it dealt with very like localized things. Yeah, sure, there were like little bits and pieces that connect to the overall MCU, but most of the time, those connecting tissues were the things that I thought were the weakest part of the movie. Shuri's story arc is really, really good. She's like T'Challa in that she sees the future of Wakanda and how it relates to the rest of the world with, while Ramonda is sort of set in her ways and kind of leaning too heavily on tradition in the midst of their loss. In fact, she kind of recoils back into that old-timey Wakandan thought process, which her husband had, T'Chaka. If you remember, obviously, at the end of Black Panther 1, like, T'Challa had the perspective of, no, we need to open up to the rest of the world and be helpful members of this global civilization that we're part of. That also mirrors, in a way, Talokan. Is that how you pronounce it? Talokan?
Yes, Talokan.
Yeah, so their sort of lore, in a way, mirrors Wakanda. Wakanda is a civilization that it's almost like, okay, what would happen if a civilization in this area wasn't affected by colonization, if they were just left free to their own devices, and in the movie's case,
Yes.
the heart-shaped herb and whatnot. Whereas Talokan, they were affected by the colonizers. So it was a bit of a different scenario. They were affected by it and then ended up building up their civilization as a means of escape, right? By the end of the movie, it takes those themes of like tradition versus future, and as you said, with Shuri's perspective on her culture's religion, and it shows how those things can unite as one, and they can sort of work in conjunction with one another.
Who are you?
I have many names. My people call me Khan, but my enemies call me Namor.
My whole time watching the movie, I had this criticism in my head that, like, sort of, again, while you feel T'Challa's absence throughout the movie, I actually did think that they weren't really like honoring the character, because after that first like real opening, it's kind of just like, oh, okay, well, T'Challa's, he's dead now, so let's just get on with the movie. And obviously by the end, you realize that they are honoring him by Shuri sort of showing mercy to Namor.
Right. Not giving in to the vengeance.
To the
that she
vengeance
wanted.
and the rage and all that good stuff.
Very similar to the arc that T'Challa went through.
Exactly. Yeah. He
with
showed
his
mercy.
father's death.
Yep. He showed mercy. He not only
Which is why she saw Killmonger.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
he thought that he was weak for letting him live.
Yep. And T'Challa not only showed mercy to Bucky, but also showed mercy to Killmonger.
Yep.
Who he had every right to kill the guy, but he didn't. I mean, he did actually kill him, but he kind of showed him mercy at the end by taking him up to see the sunset and all that stuff. But I really like that last scene where Ramonda comes through and is like, show them who you are, because that's, she's not this vengeful.
It's not really clear whether the ancestral plane is what you want to see or what you need to see, because you could argue either way, really, but the other point will have great counterpoints, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting ambiguity, I think. I don't think that's something that like needs to be explained. It kind of plays off the nature of spiritualism in general, because like it's not really something that's
Right.
tangible. you know?
I mean, and that was like one of the first things that I found like fascinating about the movie is, you know, you have Shuri, who is a scientist who doesn't believe in the faith and the religion,
Mhm.
and you know, even when she doesn't believe, she's praying because desperate measures. But
Yeah.
when she finally goes to the ancestral plane, she's expecting to see what tree panthers, all her ancestors, everybody's gonna have the answers for her, and she sees Killmonger, and
Yeah.
it's like, what is this? Like, that's got to throw a little bit of doubt into her mind,
Yeah.
even though she's seeing this and perceiving it and know that it's happening. Like, it still has her teetering on a little bit of uncertainty.
Well, she's dealing with very complicated emotions. Not only is she dealing with loss and grief, but she's also dealing with the fact that she's feeling this like rage inside of her because, she's rageful towards Killmonger because he burnt all the fucking heart-shaped herbs, so she couldn't.
And she
save her
wasn't able
brother.
to save.
Right.
Yep.
She feels guilty that she couldn't, or she feels responsible that as the smartest person in Wakanda, like she couldn't save her brother. So
Yep.
there's a lot of stuff in there. Letitia Wright's performance in this movie was absolutely incredible. I think Oscar worthy. They all really did a great job. I was honestly blown away. Everybody in this movie was phenomenal. Letitia Wright, Danae Guerrera, Angela Bassett fucking killing it in those really emotional scenes.
I am queen of the most powerful nation in the world, and my entire family is gone. Have I not given everything?
Tana Huerta was fucking great as Namor. Dominique Thorne, I thought, was good as Riri, even though I didn't really care for her in the movie, which we'll talk about in a second. I thought everybody did a really great job. This was a very localized story. At 2 hours and 40 minutes, I feel like there was some stuff that was unnecessary, and I think Riri was one of those things. While I think she played the part good, I don't really think that her character was necessary. She was a MacGuffin. She was a plot device.
She was a plot device, absolutely. Yeah, we had a quick Lick Bell cameo there at the beginning of the movie. She was the scientist looking for the metal because
Like that could have just been it. It could have just
needed
been
a special metal detector,
Right.
because regular metal detectors don't detect vibranium.
But
she figured it out at MIT, which is where
But this whole conflict could have just been could have just started because they found vibranium under the ocean. They didn't have to really go into specific detail as to why. So
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, this is one of the issues that I'm starting to feel with Marvel. Not starting, I've been feeling it. Is like, in the past, when Marvel was like firing on all cylinders in its prime, it was placing breadcrumbs leading to future things in service of the story it was telling. Nowadays, these things feel just jammed into the plot, and they don't serve any purpose other than to be a plot device, which is what Riri was. Like, hey, here's the person who invented this thing, and she's going to show up in a couple movies from now or a show. And it's like, okay. At 2 hours and 40 minutes, I would have much preferred to see Okoye's story more specifically, because I think her story arc was also heartbreaking and heart-wrenching and really good. Here's the fucking general of the Dora Milaje who's devoted her life to defending Wakanda and her king, so much so that she held a fucking spear to her own husband's neck.
Would you kill me, my love?
For Wakanda. Without question.
Yeah.
She makes a mistake in this movie, and she's, she's feeling the guilt of T'Challa's death. Like maybe she could have, saved him somehow. And then she lets Shuri get captured, and she gets fucking stripped of her role as general and kind of just exiled into the fucking villages of Wakanda. But she gets almost no screen time. And I just feel like that was a wasted opportunity because
She probably will.
well, she's going to be in the
suit.
spin-off show for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know
yeah,
if you
the
know about
suits.
that, but there's going to be a
Yeah.
Dora Milaje spin-off show, probably
Yeah,
with her
Dora
and Anika.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have much preferred to see her story play out. I would have liked to see Anika's story too. I think she was an interesting character, and she was kind of just like, hey, here's somebody you're going to see down the road. Nakia's story, I think, again, very interesting. M'Baku, there's other characters there that I would have liked to see fleshed out more, but they all sort of took a back seat to Riri.
I'm warning you, do not take another step toward me.
See how they teach the children to treat their guests.
Put this spear in here. Who brought a spear in here?
I like it.
And then also the Everett Ross slash what's her name? Valentina.
I was actually
That was a surprise. I was surprised by that.
it was a good reveal.
Yeah.
To be played out down the road.
Yeah, that was a good reveal. But again, I think those scenes didn't really service the film in a way where if you take them out, like it's not really going to change much of the story. It's all just there to set up future shit. So
I
those
felt like that this whole movie was that besides characters mourning and growing through that mourning
Yeah.
to
yeah,
tell
no,
us where they are right now, there was really nothing else in this movie but that.
yes, yeah, I
That's kind
didn't.
of why I was disappointed a little bit.
Yeah, we have actually very different. I'm surprised we have pretty opposite opinions on this because I thought the movie worked really well when it was the localized story, the conflict between Wakanda and Talokan. So let's talk about them a little bit. I think Namor was great. I'm not super familiar with
Actually, the fights were good. Yeah,
I'm not super familiar with him as a comic book character, and I understand that he came out before Aquaman, and the stories are very similar.
If you're familiar with Aquaman, you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
Very much so.
But I actually really like the decision to change Talokan's origin into something more real, because obviously there's what
Trying to say Atlantis isn't real.
yeah. Well, that's the
Okay.
thing. So Atlantis, every culture has an Atlantis. Whether it be Atlantis itself, there's always like a hidden city of gold or a sunken city or something. It doesn't belong to any one culture. I really liked the choice to make it something, again, a little bit more real, grounded in real history and real cultures, and then in that way making it mirror Wakanda. Obviously, there's no real underwater culture, but they were inspired heavily by Mesoamerican cultures like the Aztecs and the Mayans and stuff like that. And again, Tenoch Huerta I thought he was fucking dope. He did a really, really good job in the role. And the thing too, he's a villain. Like, people have criticized Marvel villains in the past.
He's not a villain.
I know, but for the purposes of this movie, he kind of is. And because your heroes,
He's an anti-hero.
sure. For the purposes of this movie, he's a villain, and he's a villain that you could relate to, which was he's compelling. And by the end of the movie, his character arc is something that you're interested in seeing play out, because the final fight of the movie is not just fucking two people punching each other. It's not like, oh, there's Thanos is here, we got to fucking kick the shit out of him. It's two characters that you very much feel for, understand where they're coming from and what their motivations are, and you're not rooting for somebody to win the fight. You're rooting for both of them to yield and like come to this understanding, which is what happened.
Mhm.
And I thought they did that really great. The one criticism that I do have about the ending, though, it was a little bit too convenient that they were just like, oh yeah, we need to put him in a microwave and like dry his ass out. I thought that was a little bit, little questionable for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's some this technical things. It's like your body is made up of how
Yeah.
much water? 70-80% water.
Right.
You jump out of the water and you're immediately blue because you can't breathe because you need to be in water to breathe. Like,
Yeah.
if we can last 3 to 6 minutes underwater, you think that aquamarine people could last 10 to 15 to an hour outside of water. But what do I know?
Well, so the way I understood it is his biology is different. That's why he called himself a mutant.
Well,
They all turn
Namor
blue.
is a mutant. They turn blue when they're out of water
Right.
because basically they can't breathe because they
Yeah.
need water to
Right.
breathe.
Yeah.
Like just like when you turn blue when you can't breathe
Right.
oxygen.
Right.
Is how I took that. But,
Well, they instantly turn blue, so I don't know.
right.
Yeah.
Which is why I thought it was a little weird. Like they instantly turn blue because
I like
they
that.
can't breathe in
Yeah.
the air.
I like that they instituted some sort of like other sorts types of like ancient lore with the sirens. They kind of were like sirens with their.
Yeah, the sirens was cool.
I
Yeah.
thought that was cool. I thought their water bombs were dope.
Yeah, the water bombs. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm being a little bit pessimistic. There were a lot of good things in this movie. And I thought this was a good movie, but it wasn't a great movie. And therefore, I am disappointed.
I was actually thinking that throughout the movie, honestly. I was on board with you. I was like, this is a good movie. It's not great. I did turn around by the end of it because with the monumental task that they had to do, I think they stuck the landing on it.
Obviously, they could have done a lot worse. I don't know how they could have done better. I'd have to actually sit down and think on it.
Well, like, remember, going into the movie, we're talking about like, okay, should they have recast T'Challa? Should they not have recast T'Challa? I don't think anybody...
They should have.
I don't think anybody expected the third option, which is what they ended up doing, which was like, yeah, no, we killed T'Challa, but here's T'Challa.
Well, really?
Yeah, no, I
mean,
I thought
all
great.
the young Avengers are already in their late teens, early 20s, and this kid is what, 10?
Who's to say he's going to be a young
unless
Avenger?
we get a time jump, we're not going to see T'Challa Black Panther as an adult for 20 fucking years.
They could age him up. But who's
how
to
are they going to
say?
explain that? I mean, I guess we're in timeline shit. So
Hang on.
sure, yeah, absolutely.
But who's to say he's going to be a young Avenger? I think the movie was pretty clear in that T'Challa Senior's and Nakia's wish for him was that he grew up outside of the influence of Wakanda and outside of the
so that when he's ready to become the Black Panther, yeah,
right. So T'Challa Senior,
he'll need to be an adult for that.
Well, no, just a teenager, even 18, 17, 16.
Oh.
Maybe he'll be a
Still
Joffrey.
10.
Maybe he'll be Joffrey.
Still 15 years down the road, Dan.
I don't know.
We need a major time jump for any of that to come to fruition.
Well, listen.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So, like, all the characters that we have now that are aged the way they are now, you're going to have to explain that away or figure it out. If you're actually going to bring, like, it felt like a half measure gesture to me.
That's fair. I again didn't feel that way. I thought it was a good way to, again, not undermine the weight of the loss of the actor and the character, and then also to give people a T'Challa in the future because of his upbringing, and he's gonna have all the characteristics of T'Challa, of what makes T'Challa special. Maybe that's cheap, but I mean, how else do you do it? I am not on board with recasting the character, although they did it with Thunderbolt Ross. I don't know.
They did it with Rhodey.
Yeah, that's that ending of the movie. I was fucking like just in complete and utter
emotional.
Tears.
Yeah,
they did a really good job with that. And you know, again, I gotta give more credit to Letitia Wright because she did such a great fucking job of conveying grief throughout this movie. And at that very last scene where she's sitting on the beach and she's finally burning the ceremonial clothes, signaling, like saying goodbye, allowing her to finally move on from that grief and the guilt. It was just very, very, very powerful. They did it I almost would have preferred to not have a mid-credit scene because the way they ended it with just the sounds of the ocean and the wind and just silence and going to credits, I thought that was really powerful. They could have just left it at that and I would have been happy. But I didn't fully mind the introduction of and the kid too, like what he said. He's like, my name, you know, that's my Haitian name. My name is Prince T'Challa, son of King T'Challa. But yeah, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. It's a 7.3 on IMDb. I'm gonna give it a 7. I enjoyed it quite a bit, more than I thought I would.
I give it a 6.8.
6.8. No, none of that. Give me an even 6.5. We want even intervals, okay?
It's half a point from IMDb. What are you talking about?
No.
It's a half a point.
All right, I'm rounding
down.
it up then. You giving it a 7.
Critics. No, I'll give it a 6.5 if you're gonna make me do that.
All right, fair. Yeah,
It's a good movie. I liked it. I will watch it one more time.
just once.
But after that, I probably won't ever care about this movie again. I hate to say that given the circumstances surrounding the movie because R.I.P. Chadwick Boseman. I love Chadwick Boseman. There's nothing he's been in that I didn't like. Every movie
he's
that
a great actor.
he's in is great. All his movies are amazing. Go watch his other stuff. But yeah, as a Marvel movie, as a comic book movie, this one is rather forgettable for me.
Also, props real quick to Ryan Coogler because what a task that he had.
That's why I said it was lose-lose at the beginning.
He had a script already laid out, probably involving Namor too. I'm sure a lot of the Namor stuff was largely unchanged. But then your main actor and friend fucking dies in real life, and you got to rework the whole shit. And now you got to honor again both the man and the character and make it work. So I think he did a really great job both writing and directing, and look forward to see what he does in the future. But let us know in the comments, folks, what you thought of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and we'll catch you in the next one, folks.
Basta.